This is an off-the-reel review, and today we are talking about Red Riding, the directorial debut of one Craig Conway. If you know anything about Craig Conway, you can go back to the days of Dog Soldiers, Doomsday, like big friends with Neil Marshall. I did not know he was moving into the directorial phase, and this movie in particular is also written by Peter Stylianou, who I've probably butchered his last name, and Peter, if you're watching, I do apologise. He's another director that I've known for a little while as well. I've seen a good bunch of his stuff. So this was like a meeting of two people that I do know on the independent scene that I'm really quite interested in seeing what they do next. And then you throw in the sort of like fairy tale Little Red Riding Hood aspect, which is all the rage right now with the public domain fairy tale stuff. But this one is very different. My name is Kevin Halden. This is Nerdly Presents Off the Reel. If you want to go over to nerdly.co.uk, you can check out our reviews over there. We've got plenty of reviews, plenty of videos, all good stuff like that. Plenty of different independent voices. Somebody over there might have reviewed this or might go on to review this, so please do also check out that over there. It did have its premiere at the Glasgow Fright Fest, and from what I heard and what I saw, it did really well. People really took to it up there. I'll talk about the plot of the movie, then I'll get into the cast and crew of the movie, then I'll talk a little bit about what I did and did not like about the movie, then I'll get into my final Nerdly Presents Off the Reel review rating at the end. So according to IMDb, the plot of this movie is after her mother's overdose, teen Red Riding moves from London to her estranged grandmother's Scottish estate, where dark family secrets, missing children, and a monstrous wolf blur reality, forcing her to fight for her survival. And that is essentially kind of what the plot is. The fairy tale aspect is definitely there in spirit alone, but yeah, we do meet Red, or as she's called, Riddell Riding. So we meet this girl at the start of the movie, and she's living with her mum, and her mum's a bit of a junkie. She's only got one full arm. She's definitely got some demons going on, and when Red comes home from school every day, it's like, what am I walking into? So she's having this every day when she comes home from school, and one day when she does come home from school, well, all of her worst fears have come true, and her mother has had an overdose and died. She's kind of told by one of the police or by social services, like, who can you go to? Is there anyone you can go to? Because if you don't go to someone that you know, if you don't go to a family member, you're going to end up in the system, and we don't really want that for you, so is there anyone you can call? And then she realizes, yes, my gran that lives up in Scotland, I can call her. I can see like what the crack is there. So she phones her, and she's a little bit standoffish at first, but then when she realizes that her daughter Scarlett, who is Red's mum, when she realizes that she has died, she's like, come up here, come and live with us, you'll want for nothing, we'll give you absolutely everything. And what I will say at this point, even on the phone, she sounds kind of sinister, so I would have probably not went. So basically, like the next day or a couple of days later, she's all packed up and she's moving up to Scotland to go and live in this massive stately home in Scotland, which looks absolutely glorious, absolutely beautiful. She meets Malcolm, who's kind of the groundskeeper, and Malcolm's sort of like, I'm the one that's going to be taking care of you. I take care of the house, I take care of the grounds, I take care of the game, all that good stuff. So like, I'll be the one that's going to be like sort of watching out for you. And she gets in there and she meets the granny, and the granny's like, seems really nice to start off with, but also you're sort of like, She meets the maid Mary, who works in the house and does all that good stuff, cooks all the dinners and things like that. Mary's a little bit like, And then she sort of ventures out into the town and she meets some of the locals, and the locals are all a bit standoffish with the Riding estate. What's going on there? We don't really know. She meets a boy that she sort of likes, and he sort of likes her, but we might not be able to go anywhere with this because like you're part of the rich and the elite, the nobility estate kind of thing, and we're just lowly like townsfolk and all that kind of thing. You get a sense of all these things, and that's what this movie does really well. It gives you the sense of the town and the vibe of the town. And even when she goes to the school, she goes to the Grey Pelt School, Grey Pelt School, Grey Pelt, Wolf, Grey Pelt, I like that. But what she starts to realise is that actually her mum's accident, she was told it was a car crash and that's how she lost her arm, that may have not been what she thinks it is or what she's been told it is. And then slowly but surely she starts to realise what's going on in the stately home. She begins to realise who her granny really is. She begins to realise who Malcolm is. And then one day walking home, even though she's told not to go in the woods, she meets Thomas, who lives in the woods. And Thomas is maybe connected to her in ways she didn't think. So then it becomes a little bit of the story of Red Riding Hood. There's kids that have been going missing in the town. We'll talk about that in a second. But honestly, yeah, that's the plot in a nutshell. I don't really want to dive too much deeper into it. There's a lot of really cool stuff in here, stuff you're really not expecting, spins the fairy tale narrative right on its head, because essentially it is considered to be a little bit of a horror. I didn't really think it was that much of a horror. It's more drama, it's more thriller, it's more tragedy, it's societal sort of commentary going on throughout the movie. So I'm going to get into the cast and crew a little bit because we have some really cool stuff to talk about here. And I'm going to start with the most obvious cast member, which is Riddell, which is our lead, Victoria Tait, and she is the absolute star of this movie. As she should be. She is the main character. She is so unbelievably good in this flick. This is like one of those low budget independent films where you find an actress who can absolutely smash it. I will say there are certain scenes where she's doing a little bit of crying and she maybe needs to work on the crying a little bit, but the screaming, she's got that down. The acting terrified, she's got that down. Acting like an absolute badass when she needs to be a badass, she's got that down. She brings the sass to the townsfolk and sort of like, she's just got everything down. I really liked Victoria Tait in this movie, and by the end of it you completely understand what Craig Conway saw in her to cast her in this movie. Lady Penelope, the granny of the house, Lynsey Beauchamp. I do want to ask a little question. So they talk about like the family tree and all this, and so Lady Penelope is the granny in the movie, and above her is her mother, who I think was called Sienna, so she'd be like Lady Sienna or Sienna, and then you've got Penelope, and then Penelope has her daughter and calls her daughter Scarlet, you know, keeping with the red theme, and then Scarlet calls her daughter Riddell, keeping with the red theme. So why is Penelope called Penelope? The only thing I can think of is Lady Penelope from Thunderbirds, and she was pink. Like, pink is close to red, but why was she Lady Penelope? Is it because she kind of strays from the family path and she sort of becomes a little bit evil? Like, maybe the parents saw that in her? Like, I don't know. Like, it was just something that I wondered about. But Lynsey Beauchamp is fantastic. She's sinister when she needs to be sinister. She's quite loving in places where she needs to be quite loving. Those moments where she sat at the table and you got like Red at one side, you got her at another side, like those moments like really remind you of sort of like Citizen Kane stuff. Like, not completely, but you can see what they were sort of going for. And I like those table moments because they're the moments in which like we're really seeing Riddell transform, and we're really seeing, you know, Lady Penelope become who she is. Malcolm, the groundskeeper, is played by the one and only Bill Fellows. We love Bill Fellows. We'll always love Bill Fellows. It's great to see him in everything he ever does. So that was really cool to see him in there. And Thomas, the man in the woods, Ian White. I believe, I did a little bit of looking into this, I believe he was in like Alien vs Predator. He played all the Predators because this guy is about 100 feet tall. Ian White as Thomas is absolutely fantastic, like sinister, and just you don't know what's going on in this guy's head. And that's a really big compliment to the actor because I had no idea what this guy was thinking at any point of the movie, and that's kind of the point of the movie. And I know this movie isn't connected to any of those Winnie the Pooh-verse movies or those fairy tale things or anything like that, but we do have little Michael Darling in this movie. Peter DeSouza-Feighoney, he is in this movie as one of the missing kids. Really cool to see him because this kid's really getting his face around, and I did like him in Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmares. I really enjoyed that movie, and I'll take any time to say that I'll eat humble pie on that movie because I thought it was going to be terrible, and I actually really enjoyed it. So yeah, it's cool to see him in there. And then we have a couple of faces that I know from the really kind of low budget independent scene. Neil Ward pops up as an officer, a police officer, an officer of the law, right off the back of his little moment in Gangs of London season 2. We have a little scene for Ayvianna Snow, someone we all know from the low budget horror scene. We love a bit of Ayvianna Snow popping up in these movies. It was just cool to see her, to be honest. Let's just talk about Craig Conway. I think this is a really well executed first film. This is his directorial debut, and he's picked like a really cool sort of concept, flipping the fairy tales on their heads, not really making it about fairy tales, but it's still called Red Riding, so people will probably go in thinking that, and then he's totally flipped all of that on its head and made it this sort of socio-political kind of movie, but still playing with those themes of Red Riding Hood. I know Peter Stylianou wrote the script for this, but I think Craig has just picked the perfect sort of like entry piece for his directorial. And I did see that Neil Marshall is also an executive producer on that, so it's really cool to have his backing on this as well, because who better to kind of back your movie about like a wolf than the guy that did Dog Soldiers? I'm not saying we get any Dog Soldiers moments, I won't lie, I was kind of hoping for something like that. Craig Conway, I take my hat off to him in this directorial debut, and I think he's done a cracking job. So what I didn't like, I kind of already talked about a lot of the things that I really liked and what I really loved about this. There is a moment in this movie where Riddell kind of gets away from the house and sort of goes on the run and goes to the townspeople, and the townspeople are kind of like trying to help, or there's like this one family that's going to try and help. And I don't want to talk too much about this family because it's a really cool moment in the movie. It's a really cool plot point within the movie, cool characters. But I do feel it brings the movie to a little bit of a halt, and it takes a little minute to get moving again. That's the only real criticism I have, is that it makes the movie a little bit longer. And this is only like a 95, 100-minute movie, which is sort of the perfect button to be hitting for these movies. I loved Ian White in the role of Thomas, but what I really loved is what it does for the cinematography. And by the way, the cinematography in this movie is absolutely dead on. It's beautiful, it's brilliant. There's not a single scene that I thought, that doesn't look great. Like, everything on the screen looked fantastic. But one of the things that I especially love is when Riddell, who's like a 15 to 16-year-old girl, meets Thomas, and Thomas is like this older gentleman, and he's like 10 foot tall, and just the juxtaposition of the two of them when they're stood together, I loved those scenes. That was like, you could take that and that could be a poster. Those moments where they sort of stood together, that could be a poster, because it just looked cinematically excellent, and sort of like in terms of like dimensions and how things are supposed to look. We do get some gore, but I feel like we maybe could have had a little bit more gore, a few more kills in the movie, but then that means introducing characters that I don't necessarily need to spend too much time with, so I can't really be too harsh on that. I just feel like we could have maybe had a little bit more, but then that might just turn this movie into a slasher, and this definitely isn't a slasher. So I'm just going to get into my final Nerdly Presents Off the Reel review rating, and I'm going to give this movie straight up, I'm giving this movie a 5 out of 5. I think this is a brilliant directorial debut. Is the movie perfect? No. It's not perfect by a long shot. Not many movies are. There are some scenes where I think the dialogue lacks a little bit, and that's been something I've said about Stylianou in the past. Like, I've often said that sometimes like he does like his own dialogue a little bit too much. Maybe we can just dial that back a touch, and it just feels a little bit out of pocket. I can't really complain overly too much about this film. I know it's low budget, I know it's independent, I know it's a first time director, and I know a lot of this cast are newcomers to the scene. I know like Victoria Tait hasn't done a great deal, but she absolutely smashes it. And those moments where she gets her moment, gets her time to shine, the way she ends this movie is fucking incredible. My only thing there is, you know those films where you get those loud screams but the sound isn't there? You know, like The Godfather 3 when Michael's on the stairs and he starts screaming about his daughter's death and you don't hear the start of it. I feel like we could have maybe done something like that in that moment and at that last scene. I feel like we could have done something like that, because it would have just been a visceral gut punch when it does kick in. But at the same time, I can't complain about it too much, because it's actually my favourite scene in the movie. I think it's absolutely brilliant. It's so well shot in terms of perspective. It's so well done in terms of the acting and the everything else that goes with it. I can't really complain. So yeah, it's a 5 out of 5. I'm kind of just waffling on now, but it's a 5 out of 5 from me. I really did enjoy this movie. Did I love this movie more than other movies that I've loved in the past? Probably not. But I absolutely enjoyed every part of this movie. I thought the concept, I thought the execution, everything made sense, and it was great. Not the Red Riding Hood story you're expecting, but it's the one you deserve right now. So yeah, It's a 5 out of 5 for me. Craig Conway, I can't wait to see what you do next. I hope you carry on this directing train. Keep Neil Marshall on board, because he obviously knows when to sign off on good shit. And yeah, if I don't see you in the week, I will see you in the cinema.